Well, this has been a long time in coming. I've been corresponding with Oliver Berliner for about 12 years. When I was editor of the Antique Phonograph News, he would write to me sometimes with information to add to some of the articles I was writing. And when I wrote the book, Berliner Gramophone, he helped edit it, which was really great. And all that time I sort of dropped a hint that it would be really nice if he came by and was here for a meeting. And after 12 years, everything finally seemed to line up, and we were able to get him here today. So this is very exciting for all of us, I know. As you probably know, our speaker, Oliver Berliner, is the grandson of the inventor Emile Berliner, who invented the flat disc record, a format that has been around for more than 100 years and is still being produced today, which is a testament to how great an invention it was. You may not be aware that Emile Berliner also invented the microphone and was instrumental in making the telephone a success, because Alexander Graham Bell desperately needed a microphone for his telephone to make it a viable product. So we owe Emile Berliner for that too. When Emile Berliner sold his patents, he moved his operations here up to Canada, where he founded really the Canadian recorded music industry in 1900. And Oliver's uncle Herbert and his father Edgar were instrumental in running that company that was founded here in the early heydays of the record production and the Victor Talking Machine Company. Oliver is the only member of the family who's currently still in the industry. He's a publisher. He's been a guest of Her Royal Highness Princess Margaret to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the invention of the gramophone. He was up here in 2000 to accept a Juno Award on behalf of his family for 100 years of the music industry in Canada. So it is my absolute great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Oliver Berliner.
The problem with speaking to you cats is that I have to be very careful, because you see, you know more about it than I do. And I'm not kidding, I'm not exaggerating. So, for the first time in all the talks that I've given, I actually made notes, because I don't want to say the wrong thing. And I probably will anyway. Incidentally, if you think that I'm high-hatting you by wearing a tie, when it certainly is not necessary, there is a surreptitious reason for it, which is that last night I spilled gravy on my shirt. So there we are. Okay. I'm going to have to, because there's so many things to tell you, and I've decided, because you know so much more about it than I, and because you are collectors and I am not, the thing to do would be to tell you a few little things that didn't make it into the history books, and I hope you'll find them interesting, if not pleasant, surprises. So here we go, and I'm going to incidentally not dwell on any particular subject. And if you want to hear more in depth, I'm going to be here for most of the afternoon. So feel free to come by and talk my ear off. Limit of 6 minutes. Per person. When I give talks like this, and as I assure you, this one is going to be like no other. I always say, since we're talking about inventions, I put a challenge to you. And actually today there's going to be 2 challenges to you, both of which I think you'll love. At any rate, the first one is, what do you think is the greatest invention of them all, besides the wheel, of course? Be thinking about it. And when you do think, consider the greatest invention being the one most beneficial to mankind. think about it, and when my story is done, I will ask you to, anybody who wants to speak up, to say what you think is the most beneficial invention for mankind, and then I will tell you what I think. And I don't know. I just think. And been fortunate enough that whenever I mention it to people, they are astounded and say, good heavens, you're right. So far, I've been right. And I don't want to come here and find out. Okay. Now, you know, Grandpa's greatest invention was his first invention. You guys are all interested in the gramophone, but as Mark pointed out, he also was responsible for the telephone transmitter, which we call a microphone. And that really was his greatest invention. The gramophone is actually a follow-on to other inventions that preceded it. Speaking of that, as you know better than I, Charles Crow was the man who conceived recording on a disc. And I always wonder, and I think we should give more attention to Crow. Can you imagine this man conceived disc recording, never got any credit or any money? That's too bad. Anyway, I like to mention it because he was Grandpa's inspiration. And it's just sad when so many people who were responsible for great things went unheralded and unsung. At any rate, the great thing about Grandpa's mic was that he didn't know that you couldn't do it. So he went and did it. Now there was another Frenchman by the name of Comte du Moncel who was a leading electrician of the era. And by the way, they called them in that era electricians, but we call them today electrical engineers. At any rate, the French were very advanced in that sort of thing. And the Comte du Moncel absolutely confirmed and ascertained that that no current would pass in a circuit if the contacts didn't touch. And they had to touch very firmly. Now, Grandpa didn't know that, so he went and did it the wrong way. And it defied the thinking of the era.
Just a second.
What he did was, he, as you probably have heard the story, was visiting his friend, a telegraph operator for the Washington, D.C. Fire Department. They communicated from station to station by way of the telegraph. And one day, Alvin Richards, the telegraph operator, invited the young Emile to come, and he was 26 at the time. I guess he was young. Try your hand at the key, Emile. And there was a spare key there. And Emile started to plunk down on the key. And Richard said, no, Emile, you don't understand. You have to press harder. We must have a firm contact. Otherwise, they won't get the message at the other end of the line. And he said, in fact, we cannot use women as telegraph operators because they're not strong enough. And that was that's what he said. At any rate, Emile said to him, you mean a loose contact or a less than firm contact would allow current to pass? Sure it will. But Comte du Moncel said that's not possible. Okay? At any rate, my grandfather went back to his garret and actually built a model, which you've all heard of or seen, the famous little drum on which he pushed a pin through the head of the drum, dangled a wire with a metal ball on the end of it in front of the pin, and when you spoke into the drum, your sound waves from your voice or any other source of sound vibrated, the little ball bounced against the pin in sympathy with the sound waves that were making the diaphragm vibrate. And there you were. It was that simple. And incidentally, years later, the Smithsonian Institution, which has the Berliner microphone, lent it to me. I had to insure it. How much do you think they wanted me to buy the insurance for the microphone and Bell's telephone in my hot little hands? Million? $2,500 a piece. But I had to pay for shipping. At any rate, I took the Berliner mic, hooked up a standard ohm meter of the time, and before the August Audio Engineering Society at a meeting in Los Angeles, I spoke into Grandpa's mic, and lo and behold, that meter defected like a volume indicator meter, but of course it wasn't indicating sound level, it was indicating variable resistance. And as I spoke louder, the pointer moved over this way, this way, and because there was less resistance as the sound was louder. So I proved it, the loose contact principle, right then and there, and or I reproved it. And that was a lot of fun, and it amazed a heck of a lot of people. And it also amazed me that the mic was still working after all those years, but then it was so simple, virtually nothing could go wrong with it. Now, we know that in 1876, Alexander Graham Bell, the great Canadian inventor, by the way, there was another well, I'll mention it in a minute. That'll be on my attack on Edison. That's that part of the talk. At any rate, Bell had invented the telephone in that whatever year I mentioned, and there were a lot of people, including Thomas Edison, who were out to improve the telephone because it had a basic flaw, and that, of course, was what telephone people refer to as the transmitter portion. We call it the microphone. They, to this day, refuse to use the word microphone, and telephone people are instructed to call it the transmitter. Anyway, and the earpiece is the receiver.